Steadily it rises.
Hey, it's ODB, the Lincoln Addict, back with another video. From the thumbnail, you would have noticed more than likely that this is a 66 Lincoln Continental that we are going to cover today. It's a fresh listing on Bring a Trailer. If I use the acronym BAT, that of course stands for Bring a Trailer. You can kind of see that up here. So let's jump right in. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. I do this kind of as a public service announcement. I'm not tied to any of these sales. If there's ever a car that I know the person, I'll make sure everybody's aware of that, of course. But this 30-year family-owned 66 Lincoln Continental convertible is up for sale, and the price, even just in the day, has already bounced from $0 to $30,000. I think this is going to be the one for a lot of people because it's a very nice car from what I can tell. What we'll do is we'll go through the normal Bring a Trailer listing information here. It kind of basically says, of course, it's a 66. The convertible was acquired by the seller's father in 94, and it passed to the seller in 98. So it's been with that family 30 years this year, of course. They've been in the LCOC, which stands for Lincoln and Continental Owners Club, often referred to as just Lincoln Continental Owners Club, if you will. The car was refurbished over 20 years ago with paint and interior and a few things that were done. It talks about an award that it won and whatnot. We can see that the car here is in Michigan, St. Clair Shores, and we can see here a rear three-quarter shot. Now, it's hard for me to tell. The back of this car does look a tad higher. I know my friend Tony, at one point, he had a 67 that he was cruising around that eventually sold. And the guy had put a little bit heftier leaf springs because he towed a small trailer between, I think, Michigan and Florida. This is not the same car, but I would note that this isn't definitely not a deal breaker, but it does look like the back of this car is just a tad higher than normal, and that could just be, again, leaf springs. It could be just this photo because here it doesn't look as bad. Here it looks more level, but I don't know. You guys let me know what you think. The car left the interior with platinum, so the paint code N, and then it was repainted. Actually, they said in 2015, so that was about 9 years ago. What we can see here is kind of that authenticity with the interior, which is something I like. Obviously, the steering wheel they did not come like this, but at some point someone took, these were super popular in 80s, 90s and whatnot. I mean, you may like this. You can, if there's any cracks in these steering wheels, you can normally find one on eBay or from folks like Lincoln Land. But if this doesn't, satisfy what you're looking for, that's easily removed. That's just a cover on the steering wheel. They go on to say the front bench seat was refoamed. The material looks original. So if they just came in here at some point and refoamed it, that's not bad. You can see there's a little dip here. So, it is possible that at some point this was dipping a little bit worse, and to their point, they refoamed it. It does have air conditioning in these years. I think 66 might have been the first year. My friend Blair has told me this many times, but ATC, automatic temperature control, is something that's in this car. And if I remember correctly, that is where, like, if you set it to like very, very cold, it kicks on and it doesn't start outputting the air conditioning until it kind of reaches that desired temperature. Not a specific temp, but if that kind of makes sense. They go on to say that the five-digit odometer shows under 41,000 miles. More than likely, it's rolled over, and I'll kind of talk to you why I feel that way. 20,000 were under the current ownership, so that's a fantastic thing. That kind of tells us that this car was, in fact, driven. We can see here the beautiful 462. This engine bay looks really clean. We'll see a couple more photos of it, of course, but in 66, you do have that blue color. You've got the blue air cleaner. Everything looks really nice underneath here. And this is the type of car, in my opinion, that you would acquire and you wouldn't go resto mod this car. If you were looking to do that, you could definitely spend money on a car that isn't worth as much, because this thing is like really nice. What we can see here is they do say the engine was rebuilt. That's not a bad thing. The engine was rebuilt on my 64, and oftentimes these engines probably don't even need to be rebuilt if they have good compression. But, a lot of folks, if they got the money and they had somebody that says, hey, I'll rebuild it for X, and you'll see that the transmission was also rebuilt. They probably said, hey, we'll pull the engine and trans at the same time. We'll go through, we'll redo the engine, we'll redo the trans. You'll never have to worry about it again. That's probably what happened. They removed the original carb, which is short for carburetor. That is, of course, included with the sale, as other parts are as well. When I see the undercarriage photos, they're this one obviously is from the back. You're looking at the bottom of the trunk area where the spare tire would rest. Very clean underneath this car. Just, really impeccable in a lot of ways. Now, the videos, you have an exterior video here. It's just a quick walk around. The car is running in this video, and I have to say, the public service announcement, do not leave these cars running, idling, if you will, without foot on the brake, okay? And it's because these cars and other Ford vehicles can fall into reverse with the shifter, and they can take off, okay? We've seen it happen. And we've heard the horror stories. Now, the only exception to that really is if the steering column has been rebuilt. And I know some might be going, hey, Jay, it's a 66. I owned a 67. I've driven in 66 and 67s. They still do it, even though the column is different than the 1s, 2s, and 3s, and 4s and 5s. So that's something that's important. It's not a deal breaker on buying the car, but it's just one of those things you have to know. What we can see here is kind of a walk around showing a little bit of the interior. To me, again, the interior looks really, really nice. It's black, which is going to appeal to a lot of people, and the car color is very classy. Here, this video, I think, is just kind of showing that, hey, the car's running. It doesn't look like anyone's in it, but there's no kind of white smoke, if you will, coming out of the exhaust. I think they even titled this one Exhaust. We see the engine bay here. Again, very, very clean. In 66, they went to this more almost like a fiber material. And a lot of times, like, these fan shrouds will be cracked. This one looks really nice. You've got your speed control here, which we kind of call... I forget what we call it now. Speed control back then. I've drawn a blank. You know what I'm talking about. You set the speed, and then you're on the interstate. Boom. Just having one of those moments. You see, it is an air conditioned car. This is kind of I've been told this is considered like a muffler. This was part of the overkill that they over-engineered on these cars. But it's nice when you see the originality here, because they did have this little badging on it, and it does look pretty cool, I think, overall in here. Super clean. Overall, you've got the battery topper, which is cool. There's someone overseas that makes these, and these toppers typically, this for any of the old timers here, and I mean that with all respect, you'll recall back in the day, these auto light batteries is what were in a lot of these cars. So basically, you can get these toppers that kind of go on it. They give it the appearance of an old school battery. You also have the battery disconnect over here, which is fantastic. This is great because John Cashman and other folks will tell you it's good to disconnect the battery on these cars so there's no kind of vampire draw. And on this car, you just pop the hood when you get home. You walk over to the passenger side. You push the little lever here, which it clicks in here. You open the hood a little bit and you twist this knob, and boom, the battery's disconnected. So it's pretty nice. But again, overall, clean engine bay, and we can definitely see that it has the 3-port fuel pump, which is fantastic, especially if this car is going to go to anywhere kind of in a warmer climate. Now, I will tell you this, looking at the comments, there's not a video, and I assume over the next day or two, a video will probably be provided to bring a trailer. There's not a video showing the top operation or the window operation. Remember, in these cars, especially if it's a convertible, you want to showcase the top going up and down. You want to also showcase all 4 windows working and the 2 vent windows. So we got 6 windows here. And then you also want to showcase if the rear auto drops, right? So you've seen that in some some of my videos. Other sellers have, obviously with the windows up, you push in the button to open the rear door. It drops about 3 inches. You close it, it raises back up. That's a value add when that stuff is working. So I can tell you that's the number one question so far in the comments. Looking at this car, it looks very, very nice. There are, little things I can see here. Like, it's hard to tell. I want to say that like this front bumper is a little tweaked. If you look here in the middle, it looks like maybe it dinged something at some point. And we can also tell because if you look at the spacing between, I think there's 9 bars in 66 that grows a little bit in 67, but you have the spacing here. You can kind of see, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but above that chrome bumper between the grille itself, it does look a little bit tweaked there. Again, not a deal breaker whatsoever, but that might drive some people crazy. We can also see the chrome looks really, really nice. So in the back here, a lot of times I talk about, I had a 67, you'll sometimes kind of see a little bit of surface rust that you can kind of clean up with some good abrasive polish, but not on this car. It looks fantastic. I've talked about this before. These are not lights here in the peak where the peak moldings come to an end. Those are just reflectors. You basically have the tail lights down in the bumper. And then, of course, the reverse lights are underneath that. We can see that it also has the option for the keyhole by the fuel filler. So that's key that you can, outside the car, you don't have to get into the car to put the top up or down. So that was kind of a value add, I think, from Lincoln for folks that, the wife, the husband that was going to the grocery store, maybe the husband was going to play golf or whatever. They could easily insert the key, turn it left, turn it right, open the a convertible top. That is actually a feature. It's technically not, it wasn't automatically added, but for most of the cars that I've seen, it does have it. Again, I think the color is classy. You could end up with someone that says, hey, I want to start with a nice car, that ends up buying this and decides, hey, I'm going to paint it. Dare I say that? The one thing I would say is that, it was painted 9 years ago, I think they said. So I think you could always do that. So many people want a black Lincoln. I certainly would leave it this color. That's just my opinion. In 66, we have that famous star. That also is the easiest tell from kind of a side view on if it's a 66 or 67. We're going to jump here. We're looking at the grill. The grill looks nice. A lot of times on these grills, they're pitted because of the pot metal that was used. This one looks pretty good overall, I would say, in my opinion. I've also talked about it a little bit, the difference in 66 versus 67. So you got a little bit of a space up here that they left. And to me, this also contributes to to 66 having the dash cracked less often than in 67. If this was a 67, you'd often see the dash cracked right here. Again, it's one of the few reasons why I like 66 a little bit more. You also have the same styling of the stainless that runs behind where, your head would rest, right? In 67, that changes a decent amount because of different rules and things like that that were starting to come in for safety purposes. But the seats are essentially the same, my understanding, from 61 to 66 for the most part, other than the patterns themselves. And that's just one thing I tend to like. Tires look good. It's hard to tell what the date code is. I always like to kind of know that in case, you're looking to buy this and you got a tight budget and, you get the car home and you go, wow, I got to throw tires on it too. But usually that's within everyone's reach. Here we can see the speed control. I'd say it's pretty rare to see it in 66, 67. It's not that I haven't seen it, but certainly you can set the cruise control. That's what I was trying to think of earlier. You can set the cruise and then you can turn it on or off, and it's definitely a nice feature. You also have the hazard lights here. So remember, up to 65, there were no hazard lights, and that's an unfortunate thing in these cars. There was an option in 65. I think technically in 64 you could possibly get it, but 65 I think was the first main year. In 66, it's added right here, so you have to kind of reach over, pop the glove box, and then you pop that on. That's a great thing to have, especially, God forbid, you break down. You could turn on the hazard, especially if it's in the dark. If you don't have hazards, get some sort of a little emergency kit that way you could kind of turn some flasher lights on and sit them behind your car if need be. Inside the trunk looks fantastic. You've got all of the factory panels in here. These are getting very expensive for cars that do not have them. A lot of times they crack and break and they're discarded. These pads as well, where the top rests, there's one on each side. I saw a set the other day for over $200, right? Because these are often thrown to the side, forgotten to put back in. In 66, they did, from the factory, install this bar, and that's something that John Cashman and now myself preach that you have to do in 64, 65. But in 66, guess what? It's factory, and it's there. Engine bay looks great. We talked a little bit about that. The blue looks fantastic. The underside of the deck lid looks great. A lot of times these are pretty nasty underneath here. Of course, this car being redone, that definitely helps. But, certainly it's hard to find one that looks this nice. Underneath the undercarriage looks fantastic. There's a little discoloration here. If it was me, I'd end up rattle canning this. You will see this in these cars sometimes, but this isn't anything to be alarmed about. Oil pan looks fantastic, especially for this car being rebuilt. I've seen rebuilt cars where they still leak. This one, look how nice it looks. It's rare to find one without leaks. You can see here underneath a few photos of the floor pans. And I think this is just kind of a weird shadow on why it looks this way. But this is how they came from the factory with this texture. Being that this car is in Michigan, does not look bad at all. The exhaust looks great. You see a little discoloration here, but that's normal. Doesn't look like there's any rust from what I can tell. All up underneath here, kind of the subframe and all this area looks really nice. I mean, I just think this is a nice car overall. So with that being said, let me jump over here and then we'll wrap this up. What do I think this car is going to go for? Well, right before I started this video, I logged into Haggerty. I just happen to be a customer of theirs, no affiliation. If you look at their price valuation tool, they have it, which for whatever reason, I did log in. I don't know why it's doing this, but I logged in. Sometimes it'll do this, but basically, they have the good condition at $58,700. Okay, now if I was properly logged in, it would give me the other prices here. I think this car is easily going to pass $60,000. It really should. I've seen cars not as nice as this car sell for a lot of money. Okay, so what I would say is that this car to me should easily hit $65,000. It really should. It has a lot of good stuff going for it. Sure, it's not perfect, but I will tell you, to find a perfect Lincoln is almost impossible. They always need something. That's what my friend Teresa and my friend Blair, they will always say. But if you can, send someone to look at it. That's always the icing on the cake. And then the only other thing, I can't remember if I read this, if the AC, if the air conditioning's working. But that's, again, I wouldn't say necessarily a deal breaker, but from the looks of how nice this car is, I wouldn't be surprised if it was. So ask questions away if you're looking to buy this car. Let me know what you think, and stay on the rise, everyone. Thank you so much for the support. ODB, the Lincoln Addict, I'm out of here.